Virginia Frere, formerly from the Philippines, 53 years ago.
Virginia, can you tell me where you were born?
I was born in a small town in the Philippines in 1936. It was a very small town where everybody knew everybody. I was the third in a family of four. There were three girls and one boy. My father was a school principal, and my mother just stayed home. In those days, the women didn't have to go to further their education because their husbands take care of them.
What was it like growing up in your village?
It was fun, carefree, and we had a lot of area groundwork. We have a beautiful, we have a humongous house, one of the biggest ones in town, with a big backyard full of fruit trees, and a big garden where we grow our vegetables. And my father likes gardening, so he put gardenias for hedges around the property.
Was there anything that had a significant impact on your childhood?
Yes, the war occurred.
And what was that experience like for you?
It was traumatic. One day we were in the plaza in the center of town having a picnic, and the next thing there was an announcement that the Japanese have landed in a close by area, knowing of course that Pearl Harbor has been bombed. And so we had to run to the hills. And then we found out the Japanese were not that close to our town anyway, so we went back in town again. So life at that time was just running on and off to the hills, depending on how vicious the Japanese are. But our house being in the middle of town, it's not that easy to run away. The garrisonville, where the soldiers stayed and the officers were next door to us. And the commanding officer came to visit my mother to tell her that the soldiers will not bother us, which is a very nice thing for them to do, considering that we were just next door to them. My father died during the war. He was only 36 years old.
How did he die?
Well, the problem was Japanese were burning homes. And my grandmother thought, pardon me, I'll stay in the house and they wouldn't bother an old woman. But they took her out anyway. They carried her so that they can burn the house. But the house has humongous posts made of the hardest wood in the Philippines, so it wouldn't burn. So they tried to pour gasoline to start the fire, and it started a little bit, but it went off again. And that's when, and I didn't realize my brother was there also. He was only about 8 years old at that time. My father was hiding in one of the outbuildings, and the Japanese found him, and they took him as a prisoner because they think that he might be a spy and or a guerrilla. And they looked at his feet, they took his shoes off, and of course, being a school teacher, he always wore shoes, so there was no calluses there. His hands didn't have any calluses. And he kept saying, I'm a school teacher, I'm a school teacher. So they said, oh, you speak English? So he said, yes, I do. Now, there was another man who was taken as a prisoner who spoke very, very little English. And they took both of them as prisoners, but my father was the interpreter. So when they were slightly out of town, they stopped. They had a pit stop. And my father decided to take off and hide in the rice paddies. So they started looking for him, and the other Filipino prisoner said to him, "Don't move, I'll just tell them I couldn't find you, don't move," because he was hiding in the rice paddies. So they took off, and as soon as the truck took off, my father started running. And he didn't know that there was another convoy of soldiers coming, following the other one. And of course, running in the rice paddies, you can see the movement there. And that's when he got shot. So we didn't know that he died until one day, a young man came looking for us. And he said that he found our father's body in the field. And he thought, well, he looks familiar. He looks like my former school teacher. So he tried to bury him with his bare hands. But he said, I had to just put rocks over the body so that the animals wouldn't get into it. And he took a piece of that shirt and came looking for us. We were out hiding in one of these small villages. And that's how we found out my father died. So he left behind a 36-year-old wife with 4 kids, ranging from 4 to 10.
Virginia, where did you go to high school?
Well, right after my father died, my uncle, my mother's brother, the only brother, who lives in the south, he came over and he said, well, you can't stay here without a man. So he took us over to the south, the second largest island. And we packed up the big house, and my grandmother was always with us, so we all went to the south. My uncle has a big house. He was a public land surveyor, and he acquired a lot of land that way. So there were 2 families in that one household, plus the extended. You always find a grandmother or a grandfather as part of the family. So that's when I went to high school there. I finished grade school and then high school. And after that, I went to Manila to go to college.
And when you were deciding to go to college, what were you interested in studying?
Well, actually, I wanted to be a teacher, but my mother said, no, all your cousins are teachers. You better go into nursing, because with that, you'll always find a good job, and nurses here are very well respected. And so that's what I did.
Do you remember any nurses when you were in the Philippines before you went to school?
Yes, I had an aunt who was a nurse, and she encouraged me to go. Also, during the war, I saw a lot of nurses who were in the hospital. Actually, the first nurse that I met was when I was 4 years old. It was a nun who was tending in the dispensary, more like an outpatient actually. And I thought, boy, does she look smart in her habit. But my father wouldn't hear of any of his children entering the convent. He says, if you went to the convent and you're a Filipino woman, all you do is beg your food. So he says, no daughter of mine is going to be begging for food. So that was the first nurse. But then when I was in high school, we met a lot of nurses who were working in the general hospital. And they looked very smart in their uniforms. Nobody was ever unemployed, and they were all very well respected.
When you went to Manila, what school did you attend?
I went to a private university. It's called Manila Central University.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it is owned by Catholics. Uh, so a lot of the restrictions were based more or less on religion. I was very lucky. I was one of the 90 who were accepted from hundreds of applicants. And I was very young when I went in. I was only 15 when I started university. And you have to be at least 18. So somebody falsified my record and I got in quite early.
And which program did you finish at the university?
I had my Bachelor of Science in Nursing.
Mm-hmm. And what was your study period like?
Study period was hectic. It was very militaristic in those days, all the schools of nursing. Very strict, and my mother didn't want me going out every weekend. Once a month is all that's enough. So a lot of the time is really with books. So I did very well. So when I finished university, I was 19 before I was 20, and I finished one of the three top students.
And when you finished the program, what did you do after that?
Well, you have to write the registration exam, which I did, and when the results came out, now in the Philippines, the RNs for the whole country is posted in the newspaper. So everybody knows whether you flunk or not. Now I was lucky to be one of the top 10. So at that time I was already working in a private hospital, in a maternity, it was a maternity hospital, mm-hmm. which I didn't fancy very much. But when the RN's results came out, the owner of the university phoned me, and he says, well, as part of our tradition here being a private university, if you finish on the top 10 in university and you finish within the top 10 in whole of the Philippine nurses, then you have a job here. You don't have to apply. There is a teaching job if you want. You can be a teaching assistant. So that's how I started my teaching career.
And what did you teach first?
Nursing arts, which was great because I liked that course very much when I was a student. Our teacher was so strict. We were so terrified of her. I practically memorized that book about yay thick. And so when I had that, I said, oh, that's chicken feed. I can do that.
And how long did you teach in the Philippines for?
2.5 years. And at that time, the in thing was for nurses to go to the States on this exchange visitors program, which is 2 years. You further your education and then you come back. So I was able to get into that with the help of my grandmother, because at that time the youngest sister was also in university, and mother said there's no way we can afford that. So my grandmother peeled her cash under her mattress to give me for my airfare and my pocket money.
And where did you want to go to in the United States?
Well, the availability was a hospital in New Jersey, but it was maternity nursing, which I didn't like. Mm-hmm. So I figured, well, I'll try Cook County. It's also maternity, but it's much more, they have much more offerings there. So that's where I went. And Cook County is in Chicago. And they deliver the most number of babies in the States. So again, here I am in maternity nursing again, which I didn't like very much, but I did all right.
Mm-hmm.
And the advantage of that too is after you finish the postgraduate course of 4 months, then they offer you a job. So you have a choice of working in the nursery, in the prenatal, postpartum, and labor and delivery. So I took labor and delivery. So I was there as a staff nurse for the next 2 years.
Mm-hmm. And what did you do after that?
Well, my former professors said to me, "What are you coming back for? Did you leave somebody behind?" I said, "No, he's gone." So they said, "Why don't you look across the border? There is Canada." Well, I didn't know anything about Canada. All I know is in Toronto there is Banting and Best, who invented insulin.
Mm-hmm.
So they said, there are several places you can go there. Vancouver is one. The weather is always nice, and the weather would be more like the Philippines. So I said, well, I don't really like that. I like the change of seasons. So anyway, Toronto, they had a lot of Filipino girls going there because it's the closest to the border. And so they said, well, how about Kingston? Because one of the supervisors in Cook County was from Kingston. So I said, oh, that sounds elegant, not knowing what they had in Kingston. So my girlfriend and I took the train, and we look across from us, and there are men in shackles or leg irons. We look at the other side, more cows. On the other side, more cows. So we said, what are we getting into here?
And what did you get into there?
Oh, at that time it was a very conservative city.
Mm-hmm.
Women, ladies, just didn't go to a restaurant and order a drink, which is really difficult for us because we were used to Chicago, going night clubbing every weekend. Here we are, and I see signs that says only ladies with escorts can come in here. So we said, oh, this is really new. So
How old were you at that time, Virginia?
I would be, that would be in 61. How old was I?
25?
I was born in,
26?
no, I wasn't even that. 23. I was 23. And so I work in a Kingston General Hospital
Mm-hmm.
in the medical ward. So that's a new experience for me. Other than the maternity nursing as a bedside nursing experience, and working days, evenings, and nights. And 4 months after I was working there, the director of nursing summoned me to her office. And I thought, oh, what did I do now? And she said, I was looking at your application and I noticed that you have teaching experience. And I said, oh yes, I taught for 2.5 years in the Philippines. And she said, how would you like to teach this hospital and this school? So I said, I don't know about that. I said, my accent is quite thick. I said, the students will have difficulty with me. And she said, well, I don't have difficulty understanding you. Just make sure that you speak slow. So I said, well, what will I be teaching? And she said, nursing arts. So I said, okay, I'll do it for 4 months.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm not happy, can I go back to my other job? And she said, well, and if you're not satisfied with me, I will go back to the bedside nursing. And she said, oh, that's okay. She says, but let's make it 6 months. Let's make it 1 semester. So I stayed for one semester, and before I know it, I was teaching more and more. And I thought, boy, this is really a good place. I was getting a raise every semester. I was getting a raise. So I said to my coworkers, I said, this is a nice place. They really give you more raise here than any other place I've known. They said, you are? And I said, yes, aren't you? So I found out that some of them complained about why they were not getting raise as frequently as I was. And the director says, well, how many courses are you teaching? And they said, one. And they said, how many courses is Virginia teaching? And she's about 3. So there it is. So while working there as a teacher, I met my future husband there. He was a school teacher going to Queens to take some more courses towards his degree. So we got married, and his family is in the Niagara region, in St. Anne's, a small hamlet outside of Smithville. If you blink your eye, you have passed it. It's that small. But my in-laws were very generous. They gave us 1.5 acres land to build our house, and that was our wedding gift. So we built a home. And being a school teacher and a nurse, the one who gave us the mortgage says, you're never unemployed, so whatever amount you want, I'll give it to you. So that's how we built our house. So we had our first anniversary in our own home. But working at that time, there were no teaching jobs available. And they said there's a head nurse's job available in one of the hospitals, in the hotel, in the general hospital. But it's in maternity ward again. I said, no, I don't really go for the maternity area. I said, I really want to teach instead of doing the bedside part. But they didn't have any. So my family doctor, who actually is a Filipino, who married a graduate of St. Joe's, he said to me, have you tried looking in Hamilton? He says, you know, my wife graduated at St. Joseph's. And the director there is Sister Virginia, so that's how outdated he was. So he even gave me the phone number and the address. So I figured, okay. But when I applied just to the director of the School of Nursing, I didn't know Sister Virginia was gone. She was doing something else. So in 2 weeks' time, I got a reply. I applied beginning of November. In 2 weeks' time, I got a call, and Sister Joan O'Sullivan, at that time she was known as Sister Celestine, said, how would you like to come for an interview? So I went, and I didn't know that she's called already my former director in Kingston. And so anyway, she said, well, you want to teach? I said, yes, I do.
And up until that point, had you heard anything about St. Joe's?
No, other than that, from my family physician, who thinks very highly because he interned here, and his wife, of course, who was a graduate. I didn't know anything, but I figured, okay, it must be all right, or my doctor wouldn't be suggesting that. So I came for the interview, and it really went very well. And Sister Celestine said, I called Miss Birkinshaw, your former director, and she said she'll hire you. She'll hire you back anytime. So when would you want to start here? So I said, well, I better arrange for babysitting. So I said, how about in 2 weeks' time? So I started at St. Joseph's in December of 1964.
And when you started, what were the courses that you were to teach?
I was going to be teaching nursing arts with another teacher who's been doing it for some time. So that was all right. I was familiar with that. And then in the next semester, I had to teach microbiology, and also medical nursing. So that was all right, because I taught medical nursing also in Kingston.
Just a second, Virginia. One
Okay.
second. Mom, the tapping on the knitting needles, I'm picking all of that out. Okay? Thank you.
I can't even hear it.
I can hear everything. So let's start in January of 1965. What do you remember the school to be like when you started teaching there?
Very traditional. I remember Sister Ann Marshall.
Mm-hmm.
She would give us the topic for next week that we are going to teach. I don't remember seeing any course outline, just the topic that I am going to teach. So that's okay. Everybody was like that. And it's the same thing with medical nursing. Medical nursing, same thing, headings. Nursing arts, basically, we followed Doreen Duncan, or Valenti now. She went by headings, more or less. So there was nothing to that. We didn't have to write our own program until later on.
And what were the students like there at that time?
The students were very polite. They lived in residence.
Mm-hmm.
They went to classes in their uniforms. And of course, you hear all the shenanigans that people do, when the students do in the nurses' residence. But we did that too when we were students,
Mm-hmm.
as long as you don't get caught. But the students were more or less very, very nice kids. They were all young. Nobody came as a mature student. They were all fresh from high school,
Mm-hmm.
which is a big change later on.
And for you, what was it like working under the nuns? And
Terrific,
Mm-hmm.
terrific. They were so easy to get along with. I didn't have any problems with them. Plus, they were very lenient with my hours too. They know that I'm going to be coming from St. Anne's, which is about 30 miles away. And in bad weather, sometimes I might be late. And that was okay with them.
And during the time that you were teaching at St. Joe's, how did the curriculum start to change?
Well, in the late 60s, there was a lot of meetings going on in Toronto. And they keep saying, well, eventually all these schools will be under the umbrella of a community college. At that time, the community colleges were just starting also. And the College of Nurses are also saying, well, I think our nurses should be all baccalaureate. Well, that's a nice dream, because even until now, that's really not the case. So we know that changes have to happen. And Sister Ann Marshall went to a conference in the States, and she met this woman, this lady who is from Texas, who was also in the conference. And what she was hearing during this time in the conference is about the changes in nursing education, that we can no longer just follow what we are doing. We have to be doing more things that are based on principles of learning. And Sister Ann Marshall came back with these ideas about what it should be that she has learned from this conference. Well, they hired this lady that she met. She just finished her master's degree, so she was she was full of beans. She had all the new ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And in order for us to move, because many of the teachers, some of us have our degrees, but many are just all they have was their diploma program that they have acquired in the nursing school, which is not much more than what the students they're educating. So teachers should really have a higher educational background. But in order to make this program that is based on learning, so that your teaching will jive with the learning principles,
Mm-hmm.
they hired a lot of specialists to come and talk to us. And we also went to a lot of conferences. So we were exposed to a lot of these learned people. And we were like sponges, we just soaked it in. And the things you learn, the things you hear about these modern programs that I haven't seen until we had it at St. Joe's, it was a dream come true because we did it. It was a lot of work.
Can you describe some of the modern programs that were integrated?
Well, the first thing that we did was we started buying courses from Mohawk College. Because if we're going to be ending up in the community college, we better prepare our graduates so that they already have the general education.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the first thing we did. We bought several courses from them, which allowed the nursing teachers who were teaching those courses to stick with nursing courses. And then when we started writing our objectives, there was this one specialist who came, and one of the questions that she asked was, what you people have to think about is, are you nurses or are you teachers? So we said, we are teachers and nurses. Okay, so that's good. You're nurses, you're teachers first. Nurses secondary, so that when you bring your students to the hospital for their clinical experience, your focus is not on the nursing care per se, but on how that student will learn from taking care of this patient. However, that is something that you have to do in your program, is make sure the students have that knowledge before they go to the ward, instead of just using block system. So we had a lot of very, very smart people in our faculty. We had those that are very good at writing objectives, because your objectives have to be very, very specific, so that the students will know what to look for in their textbooks.
Mm-hmm.
Your exams should reflect your objectives. And then, do you want your students to be good communicators? Yes, we do. You don't want them to be just told to do things without questioning things. So our program not just incorporated all these new things about teaching and learning, but also we want to make sure that our students are good communicators. As part of our entrance to the school, is that it's not just academics. That is important. We don't necessarily want to have all the highest scoring graduates. We want to get also the average ones, but we want to make sure that they pass a group interview. They have to be able to communicate, because our program, when it comes to testing small areas, it's oral testing. They have to be able to talk. So they were selected that way.
Virginia, at that time, in your opinion, was there a distinct philosophy at St. Joseph's School?
Oh, yes.
Can you talk about that?
Yes. One of the things they said is, what's your philosophy? I said, well, we haven't really thought of that. So that was the first thing we had to write. Know thyself. And if you know yourself, then you're able to accept others better. And that was the basis of things that we did. And the nuns, although they were educated in the more traditional sense, they went with the changes. They didn't bat an eye. They said, that's the way to do it. We will do it. So it came to a point where we had the best program. Not just in Ontario, but all of Canada. Because there were many schools who came over to look at what we were doing.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was one of a kind.
Virginia, what happened in 1973?
In 1973, January, all of a sudden there was an announcement. We are now going to be part of the community college. So we said, well, we thought we would, but not too soon. By that time, we were already implementing our program. And the transfer was going to occur in September. So there wasn't much time there. We had January and get our affairs in order, because in September we'll be part of the community college system.
And how did you feel about that?
As long as I have the same program, I didn't mind it.
Mm-hmm.
I was flexible. If you have traveled the way I have, changing jobs, you have to be flexible. So I figured, well, if that's the way it's going to be, it's going to be. But let's keep the program if we can. And we did, we tried. We wrote a brief, and which wasn't accepted. They want us to be part of the college system. However, what they had to realize is there were 4 schools of nursing coming under the umbrella of Mohawk College. We'll have 4 different programs.
What were the names of the schools that were coming?
In Hamilton, we have the Hamilton Civic, which is the oldest school.
Mm-hmm.
St. Joseph's is the next one. And Hamilton and District is it's a newer school. It is, they are trying they're trying the 2-year program in nursing,
Mm-hmm.
instead of the 2+1. And Brantford, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So with all the history of these 4 schools, it was I could see the problem there. If they're going to say you'll be teaching the same program, you can't do that. We have interviewed already all the incoming students. You cannot change that all of a sudden and say, sorry, we interviewed you for this program, but you're going to Mohawk College now.
Mm-hmm.
With a different program. Plus, how could we do that? How could we do that? There's no time. There's no time to do anything. And revising a program, going through it, it took us 1 full year. We were just about 2 weeks ahead of the students.
And during,
It's not just 2 years. It was more or less two years that we were doing the new program.
and during that time, what were your responsibilities as an educator?
Well, Sister Joan decided she's not going to move to the college with us.
Mm-hmm.
So she asked me to apply for the job as the director. And I said, oh, sister, I don't think I'd like that. First of all, I said, the nurses' residence, I said, I don't want to take care of these students here. You live in residence. I can't do that. I have a family. And even if I didn't have a family, I don't want the responsibility of 200 girls and some boys living in another building. And she said, no, that won't be your problem, because that will be under the hospital then. They'll be renting rooms from the hospital. So I said, oh, budgeting. I said, I hate that. I said, I spend money, I don't budget. And she said, oh, you don't worry about that. You'll have the college to think of that. You have the chairman and the dean who will take care of the budget. Your responsibility is always the program and nothing more.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, if that's all, I said, well, I can do it. So I did. I took over the directorship, and
You did that from 1973 to
1973,
to 78.
yes.
And can you describe that time, what that was like for you, working as the director?
Well, working as the director, I didn't like some of the problems that individual teachers are supposed to be taking care of themselves. In the old program, you just send them, if there's a problem, send them to the director and she'll take care of that. Not anymore. If you have academic problems with a student, the teacher takes care of that. Now, discipline-wise, that's a different matter altogether. That comes to me. But it's interesting to know that many parents still think it's Sister Virginia who is the director. They hear my name, I answer the phone, Virginia Frere, and they'd say, Sister Virginia. I said, no, it's not. Sister Virginia is doing something else.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an adjustment for everybody, because all of a sudden, the ladies and gentlemen that were my colleagues, all of a sudden they were reporting to me.
And the curriculum during that time period?
Oh, we had to keep the curriculum going,
Mm-hmm.
because we have interviewed already the incoming students. So you couldn't change that. So that was easy. To do that was very easy.
Mm-hmm.
Until such time as eventually we had to come with one common program for the 4 schools. Okay, when we did that, we used, of course, the talent from the 4 different schools. St. Joseph's, of course, is the leader. But amazingly enough, we kept a lot of the things that we did with St. Joe's, because they liked it. The other schools liked it. It was scary for them, but a lot of the new things that we did years when we started it were not new to them anymore. And we said, we don't do any more oral testing. We don't need to do that. But the program basically is this: we still have to do the what we call the cognitive mapping, which is a battery of tests that the students have to take. And then from that, we get an idea about how an individual student learns.
Mm-hmm.
And we tailor our method of teaching based on that. A lot of the audiovisual materials that we used was locally made, and it was St. Joseph's teacher who did that, St. Joseph's grad. And she developed the Learning Resource Center so that the students who like to listen and who likes repetition and who likes to do work with the student tutors, it was well-developed Learning Resource Center. And a lot of schools came down to see what we were doing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another first for Mohawk College. And Mohawk College at that time was a little bit leery about sending somebody out to go to talk to these various schools. And I told them, I said, listen, when we were individual schools, I said, St. Joseph's was invited because we were doing something innovative. So I said, it's a feather in your cap,
Mm-hmm.
feather on Mohawk's cap. If you send this person from this program to tell them what we are doing here. So they accepted that. That program went on for some time, and after that, I think I did. Our titles too were changed. We were not directors anymore. When we moved to the college, they changed our titles to heads of nursing programs. Instead of 4 heads, there were only 3 of us, so one was let go, the most junior one. So at Shidok, there were 2 of us. One was responsible for the first level, and the other one was for the second level. And the third level, we all chipped in as far as the administrators went. So that was fun implementing that too. It was a change, and you have to go with that. Besides the the St. Joseph's program was, they said, quite expensive to do. Well, it's expensive, but when we moved to the college, we brought a lot of money with us. So they couldn't really say we moved in as poor country bumpkins, because we went there with a lot of money. So when we were doing that, we received a lot of mature students. We started that at St. Joe's.
Can you describe that?
Oh yes, the first one was a lady from up north, and she has already 1 year university, and somehow, according to the College of Nurses, she didn't have all the credentials to get into a diploma nursing program. So anyway, the nuns went to bat for her. She got in. We were also the first ones that took in male students. And that was something too, because the nuns started that, and the other schools didn't have any male students. As a matter of fact, one of the directors said to Sister Ann Marshall, "What do you think you're doing, sister? Bringing all these male students into your nursing program." So anyway, we started that. Before you know it, another school started it too.
Do you remember when the school was about to close?
Oh, when the campus was
Yes.
about to close, that was sad. Because although our paychecks were coming from Mohawk College, we were so stubborn, we were still St. Joseph's. And we always had preference for clinical experiences at the hospital here. So when they said we all have to move into one campus, the other director said, "Why don't we move to St. Joseph's? They already have a well-developed learning resource center, and they have a lot of rooms there for classes. But they want everybody to be at the Shidok campus." So when that happened, we were not happy people, because all of a sudden our offices, many have to share offices, whereas before we had our own, and we are away. We are away from St. Joseph's now. So, but we survived that. We survived that.
What did you do after the school closed?
After the campus
After
closed,
the campus closed?
well, I still was ahead of a nursing program, but I had level 1. And my counterpart had level 2. So I had the beginning students. So we carried on with the new program that we had. It was different the way we functioned then, because before when I was at St. Joe's, I know all those kids who were on the nursing program there. As soon as they leave level 1, they're in level 2. I wouldn't know where they are then, except the ones that I would be familiar with, like the problem ones who are always in my office explaining why they pulled a boo-boo. So that was different. But that was all right too. I figured, well, here's another change. But during that time, I started taking graduate courses. I figured, oh, I better do something.
Where did you take graduate courses?
I went to Niagara University in Lewiston. So I worked full-time.
Yes.
I had 2 kids to raise with my husband. And then I went to take my courses across the border. Took me 4 years to finish it, but I did it. My goal was to finish it before I was 45. And my husband couldn't understand, what is this bit about 45 years of age that you have to finish your master's degree? I said, well, that's just my goal. I need to do that. So I did.
And what was your master's in?
Education and a major in administration.
And how did acquiring that change your career? What did you do with that?
Well, actually, didn't do much because I was already doing those things. Actually, the one course on independent, individualized learning, the professor said to me, can I have your notes when you're finished? I said, sure, you can. He was surprised. He says, why are you taking this? You are doing it. You're implementing it. Because I even invited them, come over and I'll show you what we're doing. And I said, well, I want the credits. I want to know whether I can learn something different or anything new, and I haven't really.
And how long did you teach at Mohawk for?
I taught there, well, after I left administration, and I went 10 years before retirement. I said, I want to go and teach the course that I helped develop, administered. I want to try it out and do it. It was fun.
And what types of courses were you teaching at that point?
Well, nursing courses. You see, the nursing courses are now, it's now an integrated program. The old school was something like several courses, like your nursing arts, your biology, your microbiology, pharmacology, medical, surgical nursing. They were all separate. But with the new one, it's all integrated. So while you are learning the anatomy and physiology of the skeletal system, you are also taking care of patients who have had skeletal or bone orthopedic cases. So in other words, it is correlated with what you are learning. But the also advantage of the program is that you follow the same students. You teach them in the classroom, you take them to the clinical. So you know exactly which student you can leave alone because they know what they're doing, and those that need more assistance, you really get to know them. And that's what I call teaching. And I kept a lot of those students as friends after they finished.
When did you retire, Virginia?
I retired in 96. When I hit 60, I figured, okay, I've had enough.
And what did you do after that?
After that, I did a lot of volunteer work. First at St. Joseph's Villa, and then I moved to Niagara-on-the-Lake, a nice quaint town. And I work in the tiny hospital there. They have 28 beds. So I work in the auxiliary there, in the administration office, and in the foot care clinic. But I said, I'm not doing any feet. I said, I'll take the money. So I also joined the Shaw Guild. That is another volunteer job. And also the Lions Club. There, the Lions Club is a mixture of male-female. So a lot of fundraising activities. So I'm always begging for something. I'm always having a different hat to beg for something. And it was fun because being a small community, unless you volunteer, you are an outsider until you are there for 50 years. So by doing my volunteer job in various activities, you see the same people all over the place because it's a small community. And I really like that. But then coming back to Hamilton, I said, I'm going back to St. Joe's. And coming back to St. Joe's to do my volunteer job there, it's like homecoming. Because I remember the first day I started, I ran into Sister Patricia and then Sister Giovanni. And I said, oh my gosh, this is home. And former students who thinks I should still be working. So it was fun. It's still fun doing that.
Virginia, it's almost been 50 years since you first started at St. Joe's back in '64. When you look at your career in nursing and education and now as a volunteer, how do you see the impact that St. Joe's had on your life?
Oh, a great deal. It has a great deal of impact because starting my teaching career in Hamilton, St. Joseph's was there. And I never really moved away. Even when I was doing my clinical teaching, after I moved back to teaching, St. Joseph's was always there. And I always had communication with the nuns. I've never stopped that until now. So there was a big impact there because even when we moved to, we were moving to the college, we didn't know whether all the directors were going to be kept because there were 4 of us. Surely they wouldn't need 4. Eventually they'll have to cut down on that. But they wouldn't want to do it right away. And St. Joseph's told me that because I was the most junior of the directors, the others were already in their 50s when we moved to the college, and I was only 36 when I moved to the college as a director. But St. Joseph's was very good to me. They said, we'll always have a job here for you. Now, how many hospitals would do that? Nowadays, no. So they took care of me.
A special community.
Very, very special.
Virginia, is there anything else you'd like to say?
No, other than I hope the Alumni Association will keep on going because I think it's one of the alumni associations that is really going strong, keeping the tradition of St. Joseph's.